Okay, we're back. It's COMP2068. It's week 6, lesson 6, part 2. And now we're going to wire up our images. When we click on the button, it spins. We had a little bit of an aside during the break where we talked about, hey, what if I want to swap out the image on mouse over it? And we saw that this can be quite complex if you don't have a preloader in play. Right? We might end up having the same issues because we need to swap out images that I kind of pop into my design. Right? So there's a couple of things we can do, right? I could pre-create, if you will, all my images that I have at the beginning, right? The challenge with this is, and I'm just telling you this is how it is, right? If I want to duplicate, if I want to copy the image from one object to the other, we're going to have issues. But let's not get there yet. Let's talk about the very first thing we need to do, which is when I click my button. Here, just refresh this to make sure it works the way it was supposed to work when I ended off. When I click this button, I hover over it, it's cool. When I click this button here, it's not gonna put them here, but inside the console, it's gonna replicate the effect of my previous code base that I gave you. I want to be able to click this button and to have down here show up with my button, or my blank, my cherries. I want to do all that. I want to hook all that up right now to my button. When I click the button, that's what it does. That's the first piece. Before we're doing any image swapping, right? Because that's like later, right? Okay, so let's go in. I've kind of pulled up my code here in Sublime, which I'm going to kind of copy and paste inside my text. Now I've got a bunch of things here. Player money, grapes, tallies. I don't need all this. I definitely don't need this. This show player stats. This is just for me, right? I've got this reset fruit tally. I don't need that right now. And I don't need this. Player money and all that stuff, because I don't care about that right now. Check the jackpot, show the winner message, all this stuff. Check range, I do need. This function check range, well, I know that this checks the value and my lower and upper bounds to make sure that it's right. So I'm going to take this function as is and import it into my code. This is actually up online for you guys, right? Because you already have this code. So I'm going to kind of copy. I'm going to go back into my code here, into Visual Studio. Come on, Visual Studio. And I'm going to kind of put this underneath my game loop. These are all my event handlers, and underneath my event handlers and before my UI. So let's just put it right here. Bam. So now I have my check range function in play. I can use this thing. I'm going to save. So that's the first piece I need. The next piece I need is I need to go down to the next piece. So I have this function called reels. Right, reels. What it does is it checks the range. So it kind of does this a random number generator. It's built in. So when the reels function is called, then it checks to see if I got blank, grapes, banana, and so on. Right? So I think I need this one. Let's just leave it the same way. So I'm going to kind of go up here and grab my reels function as is and port that in. Because you need to do this too with your code, right? So I'm going to put that underneath my check range function. So there's my reels function, that's in. I got some issues. Because I'm tallying up how many blanks, how many grapes, how many bananas, all this kind of stuff that I have up, right? So I kind of do a fruit tally here. All right, well that means if I do a fruit tally, so I want to calculate how many of these images I have to come up with the amount of money you win. So I need that tallying stuff back. So let's go back. Right? Because in the beginning you look, I don't need those things, right? And if I need those things, this fruit tally, I need all these variables here, right? So here's my tally variables. By the way, we're going to get rid of all these later. It's just the beginning. Because my first methodology, we're inheriting code, from some other designer, and we're like, why the hell is he doing a tally? Well, he's doing a tally, I can tell you right now, because I know the designer pretty well, what he did, right? Is he did it so that he would, instead of searching for how many different kinds of fruits he has in his string, he can just add them up as he goes. So when I generate a fruit or whatever it is, I tally it, I add it up, and then I compare after I do my spins how many of these fruits I have, and then I can do my winnings. I can calculate how many of these fruits make sense, right? So I need to have my tally in there. And you know what? I might as well, if I've got this, I might as well add these two things in here too. This reset tally function, I need to put in that in there as well. Okay, I don't need the jackpot yet. I don't need to do that yet. So I definitely need that. I'm going to reset my tally, but it's going to be just after my game loop and my event handlers. I'm just going to put that in here for now. Okay, reset tallies. My code's getting pretty longer, right? Because I'm adding my other code in. Hasn't been connected yet. I'm just adding the functions I need, right? So here's my reals. I'm going to go down. All right, here's determine winnings. Okay, I need to determine my winnings. I may not need to do that right away, but this is going to calculate my winnings based on how many grapes I have. This is where my tally comes in. How many bananas, how many oranges, and so on, right? So I'm just going to take this whole function. I don't need it right now, but I'm going to need it later on. Okay, go back, and I'll put that underneath this thing here, right? And approximately the same position. It doesn't matter where you put these, by the way. So okay, now I got some other issues. I got winnings and player bet. I'm missing those variables, right? So I'm going to go back in here and grab the stuff that I need, which is way at the top, right? So I got winnings, all these player money, all this stuff that eventually I'm going to need. I might as well just grab this all, right here, and put that into my code. I need that, right? Go back to my top of my code. I'm going to call these are some game objects, but I also need some game variables. I'm just going to make that here. I'm going to call that game variables. Right, you can call this whatever you like. I do still have some issues because I have a couple things inside this code here that says show win message and show loss message. For now, I'm going to kind of comment these things out because I don't need this right now. I don't have a message. I just want to make my fruits come up in my console, right? Okay, almost there. Now the next piece is I need to go into the last piece here, which is where my spin button is. Hey, look, I got a spin button function. It's called spin button, right? And I need all this stuff. A player bet, I don't need this piece. If player money, it confirms, yeah. I can reset all, blah, blah, if you don't have enough money. I'm not going to put all this in there right now. I don't need all this functionality. Here's some alerts. But if I have enough money, if my player bet is, then I need to do this. Spin result is equal to reals, which I call the reals. And I get my fruits. I create my my fruits string. That's what I do here. And then from there I can determine winnings and turn and all that stuff, right? All I really need here, my spin reel in my thing here is this right here. My spin result is equal to reals. And what I want to do is I want to take my spin result, because it's an array. I get an array of different fruits, and I want to output these things, this result to the console. Right. So let's just do that. So copy this. I'm going to go back into my code, and where I have my event handlers, which is up here, right? Here's my event. I have my spin reels, which is the exact same thing, and I drop these things in here. Right. So as soon as I spin my reels, I say, hey, call the reels function, which is down here. Here's my reels function. Call it. Check out the bet line. Get the outcome going, right, and all that kind of stuff. Calculate for. I want to do it 3 times. If you notice, here's my loop to run through my to calculate which fruit is going to come up 3 times, right? And then somewhere down here, I'm going to output it, right? So I've kind of got this thing, my bet line, right? So far, I don't see a bet line. And if you notice, I'm going to check range, and I'm going to say, when I call my check range function, I'm going to check to see that whatever I spin in my outcome, right? Here's my spin. If it's 1 to 65 or whatever it is, I'm going to compare it between 1 and 27. That's like me having I'm calling a case statement instead of me doing a range, because JavaScript doesn't support ranges in the case and the switch statements, right? It only does one value. So instead of me doing that, it also allows me to use a function instead of a value. So the return from that function, a true or false, if you will, and that's what I'm doing. I'm just going around the limitations of JavaScript by using a function here instead of a fixed value. right? Now there's many ways you could have done this thing, how to check the value and all that kind of stuff. I just did it this way because when I was thinking about it, it was natural to me. To you, you might look at it and go, well, I will never do it that way. I'll do it a different way. Go ahead, right? I'll let you code it yourself, right? So I got my bet line. That's cool, but where do I actually show it? I got to output it somewhere, right? And up until now, I got my winnings, I got my player, my winning number, and my winning message, and all that kind of stuff. But I never actually show my bet line anywhere. And if I go back to my code, I got to look for a console.log or something that shows my bet, right? My results. And I'm guessing it's probably going to be in this, show win message and all this kind of stuff. So here's my show win message, right? Because I'm not actually showing it physically on my my win or lose. It says you won, blah blah blah, right? Here's my value, and I'm also trying to send it because my original code had it go into a space. I would overwrite the text in a particular area with jQuery, right? That's what I did. I have a div that says win or lose, right? That I'm replacing the paragraph tag text with this: you lost or you won. And here's how much money you won or lost, right? But I need an area where I actually do the outcome. I actually kind of show the outcome, right? So my original code, if you look through it, so you're not confused. That's why I'm going through it with you right now. I'm saying, well, here's my spin button, right? And what I'm doing is, here's my bet entry. I'm checking to see if my bet entry, what's the value of my bet entry with jQuery. And here's my result. So I'm taking my result, and this is where I do it. Just after I do these spins, I'm using jQuery and saying, find the div that has a result ID, and take a look at the paragraph tag and replace the text that's inside the paragraph tag with this fruits result, this string that I get from my fruits result. So I can simply just do that to console.log for now, right? So I'm just going to go back. I don't need this anymore. And I'm going to go to my my event handler here, right? So here's my spin. So right here I'm going to say console.log and then fruits. Right, so that's where it's going to go. So if I've done things correctly and if everything's supposed to work out as it does, I'm not checking to see if I have any money. I'm not doing any of that stuff. I'm going to generate my fruits. So let's refresh. I'm going to kind of pull up my hamburger here and go to JavaScript console. Here it is. I'm going to refresh. Make sure I got my latest code. And when I hover, it still works. And I spin, I get grapes bar 7. Grapes, grapes, grapes. Grapes, blank, blank. Blank, blank, blank. Right? So I have all this stuff working when I click my button. Now I've wired up my code, right? The same engine that I had before, so to speak, is wired up with my button. Okay, I'm going to send this up to GitHub so you guys can see that, how I did that. All I did was took my code, took pieces of my code, slapped it in play, right? Because I gave you a code base, and wired it up to my button, to my spin button to work. Now I haven't done any checking. I haven't checked to see if my button checks to see if I have money. I'll leave that all up to you to check to see that. How do I check to see if my button has money? Did I put enough money in there? Where I'm going to put up my results. But I do want these 3 reels to pop up with results. That's what I want right now. Okay, that's the next task that we have to do. And so if you go back, I'm just going to go back to my Solution Explorer. Sorry, I'm going to stop debugging for a second. I'm going to go to my Team Explorer and go to Home and go to Changes, right? And I'm going to say added slot machine logic to spin button, right? So now the logic is there, right? There really isn't any change. I haven't hooked up my images yet. And I got to think about that a little bit. Sync. Cool. All right. So now the next piece is, how do I, when I get the result, here's my fruit result, right? And if you notice, my console.log shows the result, right? How do I change? I have my total string. This is my string for the results. This is when I get my results. So I get spin 0, right? Spin 0 is my fruit, right? I want to take the results of spin 0, spin result 1, and spin result 2, and those are my 3 images that I need to put in play. I need to plot these images on my screen somehow. I have to load them in dynamically, right? How do I do such a thing? Okay. let's think about this. I could put it directly on my stage, on my game area. So if I click onto it, it goes bang right on my area. It'll work for the first spin, right? So I'll add it in for the first time, and every time I do that, it'll add the images in there, right? But I've got to have a way of I've got to create a container for these things, right? Some kind of object that I'm going to add and remove when I click on the button. Okay. So that's the first thing. So this is my result, and I got to show that my result is the same. So I need to go up here to Game Objects, right? I'm thinking about how to get this done, and I've got a spin button. I got a background, but I need some kind of tile. So I'm going to call it like we said it before, var tile 1, right? Tile 1 is equal to what? Is a type of createjs.bitmap. That's what it is. And the same thing with tile 2, createjs.bitmap. Well, and so is tile 3. Well, hold on. This looks they're all the same tiles, right? I could make it into an array of bitmaps, right? This is where things get funky and when I lose people, it goes right over their heads, because now we're making an array of objects, right? If your object-oriented program isn't strong, you're going to have issues with this one, because you're going to look at it and go, what does it mean? How can you make an array of objects? I don't get it, right? You guys understand when I say array of objects, what it means before I continue? If you don't get it, I'm going to lose you right here, right? So this doesn't make any sense, right? I don't want to do tile 1, tile 2, tile 3. That makes no sense whatsoever, right? What I want to do is an array of tiles, right? So I'll say tiles, my tiles array, right? Right now. Okay, so it's an array of tiles, right? So if I go create.js, right, it's an array of createjs.bitmaps, right? How do I make an array of objects? Do you guys know how to do that with JavaScript, first of all? Forget create.js. What's the notation that you would think it is? Yes? Where? Here? Okay. I could do that like this, right? I could do that like this, but I need to initiate the array. This is tiles. Tiles is an array, right? How do I just make a regular array? If I was going to make a regular array, how do I declare an array? I kind of went over this with JavaScript, right? There's two ways you can do it, right? There's a constructor notation, and there's also literal notation to create an array, right? Constructor notation is the old way, which is var my array, right, is equal to new array, right? Could do that. But it's an array of what? If I say it's an array, it says, if I hover over it, it says of type any. Well, look, there's my code hinting right there. And you know, if you notice, TypeScript gives you that notation. So my array, I have to type it as a type. So I say, well, no, it's not my array anymore. It's going to be tiles, right? I can say tiles array if you want, right? But it's going to be of type createjs.bitmap, right? And it's going to be an array of those things, right? That's the first thing I got to do, right? I got to type it here. It's an array of a bitmap array. And then, of course, the way to do that in the proper notation, if this is constructor notation, you can also just do this, right? Which is the blank array. That's correct. This instantiates the new array as well. So I create my array. This is the notation. If I look at it for how it looks in JavaScript, it just looks like this. This is the JavaScript side of things. We have to see both things. And why those brackets, those square brackets mean I'm creating a new array. That's my shorthand. All right? So it's an array of tiles. Now, on the JavaScript side, it doesn't care. On the TypeScript side, we know that each of these tiles, each of these elements in the array are of type createjs.bitmap. Every one of them. Okay, so that's the first piece I got to do. So I'm going to go down to, now that I've got my bitmap array, I can assign elements of my bitmap array, right, into them. there's a couple ways I can do this, right? I could load up all my tiles and I can copy them, right? Like a shallow copy, if you will, from and replace my elements, my bitmap elements, because they've already been established, right? So I can create every image that I want, all my images first, and copy them in. Or I can just use the new keyword every single time I generate it and wipe out that image like we did last time with that little example. Now, that didn't work for us last time, right? So let's try it. So the first thing I want to do is in my mind, I'm thinking of how to code this up. I know in my spin result, I want to take my spin result and use that as a path, which I, by the way, know what my path is. If I go to Solution Explorer, I know my path is banana, bar, bell, blah, blah, whatever. One thing I need to do is, by the way, is change all this to lowercase, because I have my lowercase images over here, because I need to do this, right? Grapes is lowercase g, banana is lowercase b. This is what you're going to have to do too, if you're following along, because remember, I'm taking my code and modifying it. So I can start loading up my images, if you're following the way I'm doing things. By the way, there's a better way to do this, but we're not going to explore that right now. I want you to get this way first. Then we'll talk about preloaders and all that stuff. Okay. Blank, grapes, banana, orange, all that stuff. All those things are changed now. All right, and I'm going to build my path from my image path, right? So I get my results, and I kind of throw them out. And now what I want to do is I want to say, well, you know what? My tiles, my first tile, which is my first one right there, and it's of type bitmap, is equal to my result, spin result, this one here, spin result 0, right? Let's see if we can do 1. Spin result 0, and I got to add that. I got to add in there my dot ping, right? So that's dot ping for the path. That's the first piece, and I also have to add in. That's interesting that I'm doing that. That's great. That's just the actual thing, the image itself. And I also have to add, it's giving me an error because I'm not adding a bitmap, I'm adding a string. Just bear with me. And then, of course, I have to put in the path to that thing, which is assets/images, right? And then I got to add that to my spin result from my path. This is my path. And then, of course, I've got to add in there the new keyword, new createjs.bitmap, right? And then put this whole line in here as the path, which would go to here. Do you guys see that? All I'm doing is I'm taking whatever my spin result was, grape, blah, blah, whatever, banana, and I'm building my path. I'm saying assets, images, spin result 0, ping. Yes? Thank you. I am. Otherwise it'll go meh, it won't work. So I've got that. I'm building my path. After I got my path built, I'm creating a new bitmap image and assigning it to my first tile. Well, you know what? I can loop through this now. I don't have to create one after the other. That's why I created a tile array as opposed to individual tiles. So I can create a for loop, you know, and I'll call it index of type int. Integer, not interface. Let's say int is equal to 0. Hold on a second, I'll go back to that in a second. And where index is less than 3, right? And we're going to go index plus plus. And we're going to create our loop in here. And we're going to take this whole thing and drag and drop it up. And of course, we got to replace the tile, this index 0 with index, right? Because that's, instead of it being a hard-coded tile, we're going to use this. So that's each of our tiles. So each of our tiles out. Yes? It would still work, but thank you. Yes, so this is the thing. So this is the thing. And I apologize for being I'm trying to do this on the fly. It's much harder to do when you're doing this on the fly than if you're actually thinking about everything. Okay, so this just generates my tiles. That's all this does. Now, if I wanted to show you what those are, I'm not going to show them on the stage first. And I haven't added them to the game container. I'm just assigning the actual images. Okay, let's do a little bit of an experiment here. I'm going to go console.log, and what if I send in the tiles index, the index of that tile that I'm looking at, right? By the way, maybe you know what? Instead of index, why don't I use the word tile? So I'm going to refactor this one. I'm going to go right-click, refactor, rename, right? I'm going to change index to tile, right? So it kind of does all those, right? That's a quick way to do it. And it makes more sense. The tile within the tiles array that I'm looking at, right, is what I'm taking is my spin result for my tile, right? And I'm creating my path dynamically for it, and I'm creating this new bitmap every single time. Okay, why is this bad? So I'm creating a new bitmap every time. Boom, boom, boom. Every single time I'm spinning, a new bitmap, and I'm reassigning it over to a lot of cycles, what this is doing. This is why preloading works better, because I kind of preload everything, and then my performance stays high. I've already preloaded my images, and all I'm doing is calling them into play. Here, I'm actually loading them from my code over and over again. I'm loading it in. This is bad, right? But we're going to do this bad way first. Okay. So let's run this thing, and let's see if we get some errors. Okay, so I'm going to refresh this thing, because refreshing is a good thing when you do your code, right? Because you might think you did your code right, and it's not working. I'm going to have my console down here, so I can look at the results. I'm going to click onto it and spin. Okay, I got a couple of these things happened. Let's take a look at what I've done. So I look in the first one. I'm going to kind of put it up here so you can see the result. When I passed in the entire, the first image should be cherry, right? So what I'm passing into there is an actual bitmap. I'm outputting the bitmap, and this is what JavaScript will give you. If I go down to the image property of my bitmap, which is right here, it should say cherry, right? That I've loaded in. There's my location, right? Assets, images, cherry.ping, right? So that's going into my cherry. So actually, I'm getting my image. It's finding it for me, right? The JavaScript console, what it allows us to do is look at the actual object. If I output the object, it shows me every property and the prototype of the object itself. My object is a complex object because bitmap is a class, right? So I'm outputting the class, the object, and it's an object of the type bitmap, and so it inherits all the stuff from the object super class, which is part of all of JavaScript and many other programming languages, as well as the display object superclass, which is all objects in CreateJS inherit from, right? Plus all the stuff from bitmap, right? So these are all the different things. These are all the properties, right, if you notice, that are part of my bitmap, like on blur, on cut. These are all my events that I could ask for, on cut, on error, on load, right? On load is null right now. On load data, all these different things are part of it. And it also tells me my outer HTML, what it looks like, my cherry.ping, and this is all part of my image, because I clicked on this image. Okay? And if you notice my X and Y coordinates here, my X and Y coordinates for this particular image, right, are 0 and 0, which means they're going to go to the top left corner of my screen if I add them in. I don't want that. I want this image, now that this is loaded, to go in its proper place, right? So you might think that I should put in my coordinates in here as well. I like your thinking, but you'd be wrong, right? Because unless my coordinates are exactly equal, right, like exactly the same, and somehow I can form up a formula to add my coordinates in every single time as I generate these images, I'm going to have an issue. Let's check to see if that's possible. Here's my coordinates. I need to put my images, my tiles, inside these reals. They've got to go at these exact coordinates, 59, 164, and 269. I start at 59. Let's see that. So I say 59 minus 164. Well, there's 105 difference from the first one. I can start at 159. And let's do this one. 164 minus, and my x coordinate is going to be 269. Hey, I'm good. So if I add 105 each of my loops, so I go in, my y coordinate is going to be the same. I'm good there. and my x coordinate in this particular case, only in this case, because of the way I've set up my slots, because they're identically equal in terms of spacing, it's going to work. For you, it may not, because your slots might be closer together or farther apart, and they may not work for you. So be prepared to put it in its own little loop or separately for each of these objects. For me, it's going to work, right? So I need to go to start 59 and add 105 and add 105 again for each loop. Okay, how do I do this in this loop here? Well, I know that my initial one is going to be like this. Tiles, tile, the tile of tiles, right? Dot x, my coordinate x, is going to be 59 starting off. This one will be my first one. And my tiles, tile, dot y coordinate, right, is also going to be, I think it's 188, right? 188. And by the way, when I say 59 by 188, what do I mean? Where is it going to be? It's going to start dragging in the top left corner of my screen. So far, I'm not changing my registration points, my reg x and reg y, because that's in the top left corner, so I'm just slapping it in. That's my top left coordinate, and everything is top left right now, so we're leaving it that way, right? Okay, so this is good, but now I got to add in a value. So every loop, I got to take my tile, the number of my tile, and multiply it times equal or plus equal 105, right? So this is how we're going to do it. We're going to say plus equals, right, 105. I like this idea. But if I do that, my first one will never be, just, but not just 109. I can't just add 105 to it every single time, right? Because if you notice, there's not a value here, right? So I could come up here and say, you know, some kind of other variable, like temporary variable. I could say var tile x is equal to 59 as my default, right? And var tile y is equal to 188, right? I'm not changing this anyway, so this actually stays the same. I don't have to do this, right? Because I don't need my y coordinate to change. It's always going to be the same. But my tile x coordinate is going to start off like this, and I can just replace this with tile x. So my tile x plus equals to 105. It's going to add whatever my tile x started off, which is a number. Integer, right? Or a number is what I want to do, right? That's a number. I want to add on 105 to this number, and I keep doing that every time, right? I could do that, 105, 105, but the first one I don't want it to do it. So how do I do that? Well, I got to multiply this by, this result, right? As an example, by the tile. And if I do that, I got to be careful, because if I multiply it by 0, right, 59 plus 105 plus 105, I got to do it twice, right? So what's my code going to be? Because if I put in, times tile, this is an issue, right? Because my tile, this is okay, because in the beginning it's going to go 0. So 0 times 105, I'm going to get 59, right? Okay, now it's going to go 1. 1 times 105, right? And then it's going to be the number that I want. Okay, how about when it goes to 2? 2 times 105 is, 210 plus my tile x, which is 59. But guess what? My tile x has just plus equals. I don't want plus equal. I just want to plus it, right? Because that way it won't continue to add. If I do plus equals, it'll remember the last one, and it'll be like 300. It'll be way over on the other side. So this is enough. So I'm multiplying it by tile, because as we iterate through this loop, it starts off at 0, so the first one's going to be 59, right? And the second one is going to be 59 plus 105, and the third one is going to be 59 plus 210, which is going to work out. So it's going to push it aside every single time, right? Now I could have taken this value out, this 59 now, because I know what I'm doing, and put it back in there, because I know that's the actual answer. I don't need this other variable at all, right? I just want to prove it to you so we can kind of think through it, right? Okay, so cool. This is going to print everything out. I've got my coordinates. Let's just run it like this now, without adding it to the display list. I'm doing it step by step so we can see what's going on here, right? I'm going to go back to my tools, JavaScript console, and I'm going to refresh, right? I'll pull it down so you guys can see it here for a second. I'm going to click the spin button, and when I do, I see these three things again, these three objects. Now, my fruits are orange, banana, and blank. The first one, this one here, should be a banana in my image, right? Here's my banana, or sorry, is my orange. Did I say orange? Orange, my image, right? This is cool. And, sorry, one more thing I should show you is my coordinates. I want to make sure that my coordinates are accurate. So if I go to the bottom, it says 59 by 188. This is the good. I've got my coordinates set up now. Okay, let's go to the bottom and see what these ones. 164 by 188. Hold on, is that right? 164 by 188. That's good. And what about my third one? This is the trick here. This is all testing before I actually put everything on very accurately. 269 by 188, which is right here. 269 by 188. So I'm good. So my images are going to appear in the right positions. I've got that happening, right? I know this is going to work now, and now I'm going to add them to the display list, which is the game container. Okay, so we'll go back. This is where it's going to be, and I can add them here because they're adding in while I'm looping, right? Might as well. Why do I want to do it all separately? So I'll say game.addChild, and I'll say tiles tile, right? Because that's going to add the new tile to the game container every loop, every time it iterates, and the exact location where I need it to be. This is my locations, right? Makes sense? Okay, let's see if it works. For God's sake, we've pity-patted enough times. All right, and I want to see what happens when I press the button again. That's the trick. All right, so here's the first one, and clickety-clack, grapes, cherry, blank. Clickety-clack, blank, orange, grapes. Clickety-clack, orange, blank, grapes. Clickety-clack, blank, orange, blank. Huh? Not bad, right? So I've got my functionality in place. This is the 90% of the functionality you guys need to pass this thing, man. All right, right here. I'm showing you how to connect it, and I've got to kind of come up with that loop in order for me to do it this way with the coordinates that I have here in my slot machine. Okay, let's try this out. I'm going to go back to my Solution Explorer, and again, I coded this for you, this little piece here, this spin the reels thing. It's not complete by any means, right? You got to calculate, see if the guy has enough money. You got to see if the guy, whatever, and there's no animation. This is just putting the images on. Let me check one thing for you, though, and I want to check if this is really nice that we did here. Is this really good? Rob, what do you think? Is this a good thing to do, right? Let's take a look at my game container for a second. I'm going to print that out here. So I want to go to my game container, and at the bottom of every loop, I want to see what my, I want to do a console.log, and inside my console.log, I want to put in my get num children. Okay, I want to get my number of children. I want to print that out. How many children do I have on my display list? So this is how many objects have I added into my container, and I keep doing that over and over again, right? Okay. Bear with me. You'll see what I'm talking about here, right? And I'm going to get rid of this. I don't need to I don't want to print out the tile anymore, right? I want to just do this. Okay, so let's just try this out. Okay, so again, we're using this for output. I'm going to drop into the JavaScript console here, and I'm also going to refresh. Why am I doing this over and over again? To reduce the chances that you're going to say, hey, Tom, nothing changed, right? Yes, it did. You need to refresh your cache, right? Okay, if I click the button, look what this is. Look, I got 3, 4, 5 images. 3, 4, 5 children. Let's see this is right. Hold on a second. I've got my bitmap image for my game container, right? That's 1. I've got my button, that's 2. I got my 3rd, 4th, and 5th object. That's 3, 4, and 5 objects. I got 5 objects so far in my game container. All right, let's click that button again. Click. 6, 7, and 8. Hold on, let's click that again. Click. 9, 10, and 11. What am I doing? Click. 12, 13, and 14. Keep going. No, but what am I doing to the container? Hold on. What am I doing here? What I'm doing is I keep adding to the array. It's growing and growing and freaking growing until infinity. If I keep playing this game one day, it's going to crash, right? Because I'm not adding in, what I'm not doing is I'm not adding in the same object again. What I'm doing is I'm adding a new object to the display list, right? And this is bad. This is very, very bad. My memory is going to go just out of whack over here. So what do I need to do first? I need to remove it first and then add it in. Okay, now this is going to pose other problems like we talked about earlier. Let's see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my, my code, back to the drawing board, right? So I've got my game at my add child happening right here, right? Well, this is cool. What if I try to remove children that don't exist? This would be bad, right? Children that don't exist would be very bad, right? So that is an issue. I can't remove a child that doesn't exist. And when I first spin, I already have, you know, I have children in there already in my game container or whatever. I have like my background. I've got my stuff, but I don't have my these tiles. I don't have those tiles in there at all. How do I reduce the amount of children that I have in here when I spin again? Well, I keep track of my turns. That's one way I could do it. I could have a pointer that keeps track of how many turns I've taken. So if it's turn 2, if my turn is greater than turn 1, I have that's one way of doing it, right? I could just say, you know, wipe those children out first. Wipe the children out first, and then put the new one in, right? If the turn is if the turn is 0, right, as an example, then, or 1, or whatever I start at, then don't do that. Don't do that. Don't remove the children. Only remove them after the second turn, because you've already put them in. So I don't have to do a check to see if they're in or not. All right, so let's do that on the top. I got to set a variable, and I do have a turn variable at 0. I have a turn variable already I've set up in my game variables. And what I want to do is check to see if my turn is 1, if it's greater than 0. If my turn is greater than 0, right, then remove my children. So let's do that. And I'm going to do that before I add it in, right? So I'm going to say if, right here on the bottom, turn is greater than 0, only then, and it's going to check every single time if turn is greater than 0. I'm going to game.removeChild, not all children yet, tiles, tile. Right? This is an issue. It's an issue. It's a huge issue. Right? Because what am I actually doing here? What tile am I removing? I'm removing the old one. And if I do it here, I've already reset this. This is no good. I can't put it here. What I got to do is instead of here, I got to put it here at the top. Right? Before I reassign my tile, I got to remove my old one from the container. All right? And then I add it back in with the proper coordinates. Okay, let's try this. And let's see what kind of difficulties we're going to run into now. Right? So, okay, I got my game, refresh, right? And I want to go back into Tools and go to JavaScript console. And here I am. I click the spin button, blank, 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 3, 4, 5. Click the spin button, 6, 7, 8. Hold on. Click the spin button. Oh, man. 9, 10, 11. What happened? I didn't do anything. Hold on. Why is this not doing anything? God damn it. Right? Why is it not working? Because we don't know where your children are. Do you know where your children are? Right? This is like that old question. It's 11 o'clock. This is an old thing. We used to watch the news, right? And when I was a young guy, right, and we used to see this announcer goes, it's 11 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? Right? Well, guess what? Game doesn't know what the hell you're talking about because it doesn't know which children you're removing. It doesn't keep track of which child you're trying to remove, right? So there's actually another function called remove child at, but it removes it at the level that it gets added in. Now, this is tricky because right now our children are 3, 4, and 5, right? Because we have 3, 4, and 5 children. But it's the number of children. So it's actually 2, 3, and 4, right? Child 2, 3, and 4 are the ones that I want to remove, right? So let's see how this works. If you change the order that you add stuff in, this will not work because this is how specific it is. So for me to remove children at a specific spot, I want you to picture the display list like this, like a bunch of cells. Okay, so here's my display list, peoples. I want you to tell me here's my display list. I'm just going to draw this out for you guys, so you guys tell me what to do before we leave. And the first is, this is 0, this is 1, this is 2, like a big stack, right? And I have, in my first position, I have my background, right? In my second position, I have my, my button, right? In my third position, I have my first reel, so my first tile, tile 1, right? Tile 2, and tile 3. That's what I have in my display list. That's the order that they got added in, and my display list governs the stacking order and the layering order that I see things on, because each individual bitmap is unique. So it's on one on top of the other one, right? Now for us, it looks like it's all nice one, but it's really not one. The trick is the display list, this display list here, right? The display list happens in this order. So right now I've got 5 issues, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's why it says the first one says 3, 4, 5. If I add them in again, they go 5, 6, 7, and then 8, 9, 10, and it'll keep going up and up until infinity. It'll keep adding to that array infinitely, right? What I want to do is I want to point to this second one. So in this display list, child at 2, remove child at 2, remove child at 3, remove child at 4, and put them back. But what if I only have one button right now? What if later on after this I add a couple more buttons? Right? Well, guess what? All these things are going to be messed. Right? That's going to be totally messed up. So doing it this way, absolute positioning in the display list, is bad. Right? It's really bad. Right? Because I don't know how many buttons I'm going to add. What if I change my the way my UI looks again and again and again? I have to go update this over and over again. I don't recommend it. Right? To do remove child, it would work. Remove child that would work, right? I can remove the entire display list though. I can remove everything and put it back. I can create my UI again. I could. That's another option, right? But that's really costly. That's like everything's back, everything's back, everything flashes. It'll flash like every time I press the button, the whole thing will just go. Well, we won't notice it, but it'll actually redraw the screen again, right? So that'll reduce my display list. It just removes all children, right? But I don't want to remove all children from my whole display list. I want to remove all children from just these pieces. And this is where I recommend, by the way, I'm going to leave this to you to figure out. This is the next piece, is to create little containers for each of your reels, right? Where the reels themselves, the containers that are each of the reels, are going to surround your tiles, right? You're going to make tile containers. And the tile, it's going to be and the best way to do it, of course, is to make an array of tile containers, right? I'll just get you started on it before you figure this out. So if I go back to my my code here, here's my tiles and their bitmaps, and now I want to do tile container. So I'll say var tile container, tile containers, right? And it's of type create.js.containers, right? That's what it is equal to a new array. So now I have an array of containers. Right now, there's unlimited number. I can specify how many. Right now, I only need 2, right, as an example. And what I'm going to do is I can say container 0, container 1, and container 2. I add them into the display list one time, right? And now the trick is here is I'm going to remove all children from my container, right, but not remove all children from my display list. And this would solve my issue, right? Because I can wipe that container over and over again. Who cares, right? It's not going to notice. And then the great thing is, I can add the container to my game container. Remember, because I can stack my containers on top of each other. And it doesn't matter the order that I add my containers, and I can add as many other things as I want, right? And it won't matter because it's the container that does all it's individual. It's going to map everything out and not my game. Okay? So I'm going to save this and put it up on GitHub so you can continue with this. I'll leave that one to you. Because if you leave it this way, the game container will go into infinity. It'll grow and it'll crash your machine eventually, especially when you get complex graphics and sounds and everything else. And let me just go into Solution Explorer. I'm going to go home. And I'm going to stop. I know, I just designed your game so it crashes. It's perfect. Let's go here and say added images, or linked images to logic. Linked image, bitmap images to game logic. Okay. Again, if I run this thing the way it is, just to show you where we're at before we stop for the day, if I press it, it looks like it works, and certainly it does. But we know behind the scenes what it's really doing. It's adding an additional objects to my display list, which we do not want to have, because eventually, when we play a real game, not this one, this slot machine, but we actually play a game where we're moving an object back and forth on the screen, and we continue to add new objects in, it'll start slowing right the hell down until it stops. Your frame rate will drop to like 0, right? So don't do this. I'm showing you what to do for the basics, but I need you to fix it.